From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Florida rejects a proposed high school advanced placement or AP course in African American studies, which Governor Ron DeSantis says was politically biased. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnist Kim Strassel and editorial board member Kate Batchelder-Odell. Welcome and happy Friday to you both. The AP program, as many parents know, is run by a private nonprofit called the College Board, and it lets high school students take advanced classes for college credit as long as they do well on the AP test. And the College Board's offerings range from Latin to biology to macroeconomics. It's working on a new course in African American studies. The Florida Education Department recently refused to give it its stamp of approval for the class to be offered there. And here is how Governor Ron DeSantis this week explained the decision at a news conference.
In the state of Florida, our education standards not only don't prevent, but they require teaching Black history, all the important things. That's part of our core curriculum. This was a separate course on top of that for advanced placement credit. And the issue is we have guidelines and standards in Florida. We want education, not indoctrination. If you fall on the side of indoctrination, we're going to decline. If it's education, then we will do. This course, so when I heard it didn't meet the standards, I figured, yeah, they may be doing serious. It's way more than that. This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids.
Kim, what do you make of this rising controversy?
That's a great point. This is very out of the mainstream. It's certainly what you would call critical race theory. This is interesting because many of the same people on the left who have insisted for the last 2 years, 3 years, that critical race theory isn't taught in high school and that anyone who suggests otherwise is making it up. Now we have this obvious example of how it is being foisted on students. Now, again, this is a pilot program, and it sounds as though there may be some changes made to the final curriculum, but it's out there. So now instead we're having a semantic debate in which the same people on the left who claimed it wasn't being taught are now trying to explain why the particular curriculum in this AP class doesn't really count as critical race theory, even though as laid out in that AP framework for its course, it pretty clearly is.
But one of the things that's notable about this story, I think, is that there was a whole lot of news coverage and the chattering class got going on this with some hot takes before the draft document of the framework curriculum actually leaked. And now it has. And so now we can compare what people were saying against what is actually in the framework document that the College Board has created. And here are some of the pieces of the course material. There's a topic on the reparations movement. Students explore the case for reparations, including by examining House Bill H.R. 40 and a text by Ta-Nehisi Coates. There's one on Black queer studies. This is a line, explores the concept of the queer of color critique grounded in Black feminism and intersectionality as a Black studies lens that shifts sexuality studies toward racial analysis. There's one on post-racial racism and colorblindness, explores concepts such as post-racialism, colorblindness, racecraft, or inequality. And some of the suggested material is from professors, one of whose official bio at her university says that her work is foundational in critical race theory. And so, Kate, I think that Kim is right that part of what is going on here is a semantic debate about whether asking these high school students to read these authors and think about these things is in fact actually technically teaching critical race theory. On the other hand, I find myself wondering if you read this kind of curriculum and put it in front of Florida voters, what are the odds that it would get anywhere close to majority support?
Right, Kyle. I don't think the distinction that we're not teaching critical race theory, we're just reading about it, writing essays about it, and taking tests about it. I don't think that distinction is going to be very meaningful to parents in Florida. I think to break down what we're discussing here, I think it's worth asking, do parents want their children to receive an education that suggests every subject of history should be viewed through a lens of race, class, and identity? I think the answer to that is no. And I think that's the fundamental thing that this course here is advocating and what parents are objecting to. So I think also we can go through some more of these subjects here and suggest that it is not also offering a very rigorous education on some core subjects of history that students should graduate from high school knowing about. I think it is worth looking at Florida's statutory requirements for teaching, because we're getting some discussion that Florida doesn't want to teach Black history. And when you look at what Florida has in law and also in its guidance, it says one piece of guidance that is, students shall develop an understanding of the ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping on individual freedoms, and examine what it means to be a responsible and respectful person for the purpose of encouraging tolerance of diversity in a pluralistic society and for nurturing and protecting democratic values and institutions. It also, Kyle, lists core topics that need to be included in instruction, and that includes the history of African peoples before the political conflicts that led to the development of slavery, slavery itself, abolition, the history and contributions of the African-American diaspora to society. All that to say, Kyle, I think we need to look and see here that Florida is not objecting to teaching Black history, which is essential to American history. It is objecting to this novel theories of how it's taught and what lens you look at history through.
And I don't have a problem if there are students that want to go beyond what the core curriculum says. And there's a lot of actual history in this AP African American Studies framework. It starts with stuff about the Sudanic empires, Great Zimbabwe, the Kingdom of the Congo. There's actual history in there. But personally, I don't think Florida would have rejected this curriculum framework if that was all that was in it. If it were just talking about history and going beyond to some figures who are not in the classic high school textbooks from the civil rights movement, say Rosa Parks, I don't think Florida would have rejected that. And that's why I think that some of the comparisons, Kim, that we're seeing made by critics are a little misleading. I mean, people are saying, why does DeSantis not have a problem with the AP course in European history, for example? But if you look at the AP course in European history, it's all about the Reformation and the Iron Curtain. I mean, it's history.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Just like if you look at the AP course for U.S. history, it's incredibly involved in terms of the events of the past. Now, look, I've got several high schoolers who take AP courses. So I've actually seen a lot of these textbooks and had a lot of discussions with them about what they're learning. And I agree with you entirely, Kyle, that there's great benefit for kids who are academically more achievement minded, for whom a regular U.S. history course, they pass it with flying colors. But one of the merits of these AP courses is it does really involve a deep dive. And some of these courses are really quite impressive because they are essentially college level courses. And, looking at that framework for the AP African American Studies proposal that's out there, and again, this is a pilot, I agree with you. There's some really great stuff in there, and it's a wonderful addition to what kids might otherwise be learning. By the way, this would certainly fall into more of a kind of AP elective class, as it were, because most of the time kids are focused on taking those core AP classes that get them out of requirements when they go to college. So AP literature, AP language, AP US history, certain AP science courses. But, for the kids that had the time and the motivation, sure. But the provisions that you were reading in there are clearly something beyond history. They're not about history. It's about teaching kids to look at the world in a certain way, not learn about past events. And in that regard, it is in contravention to Florida law, which says that history has to be taught objectively. You can't be pushing an agenda or an ideology. So DeSantis has law on his side. He has common sense on his side. And, hopefully we've heard from the College Board that they intend to take the feedback that they have got from the 60 or so schools where this was being piloted and update the course. And they'll come out with a more formal one in a few weeks. And we'll see if they took some of this on board, because I have to imagine that while Florida is speaking about this openly, there were maybe some complaints to the extent parents and some administrators knew about what was in this course from other states as well.
But as far as I understand, the College Board is saying that it is taking feedback from the pilot courses and not from any of these states or these public controversies. And notably, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has come out on the other side of this. He sent a letter to the College Board essentially saying that he wants no changes made to the curriculum as it has been circulated already. And Kate, I mean, it does raise questions, I think, in people's minds about this whole setup, because education is a state and a local function. And yet, layered on top of this now, you have this national AP program, advanced placement program. I assume the AP biology course is the same in Illinois as it is in Florida, even if the high school biology courses use different textbooks and have different statutory standards on them. And the College Board is a private, not-for-profit group. And so I think many parents are probably scratching their heads and wondering, why is there this private group that is coming up with the AP curriculum totally in secret and not really being transparent about that? Remember, the only reason that we have seen this African American Studies proposed curriculum, this pilot program, is that it leaked in the media because of this controversy in Florida.
Yeah, Kyle. I mean, I think it's worth asking whether we want this institution to have basic monopoly control over what ambitious, excellent young high school students are taking in public schools. The advanced placement curriculum is used all throughout the country as what you do if you want to get into a great college. And really, it has a real lock on that market. And while this particular course is definitely an outlier in the curriculum, there have been substantive debates about other advanced placement courses that I think are worth thinking about. The National Association of Scholars has gone several rounds with the College Board over its revisions to both European and American history. Several years ago, there were new standards for European history that didn't include Churchill, and the National Association of Scholars went back and forth with them, getting them to make some changes and relent some, but other figures like Václav Havel are not mentioned. And so there's long been a reason to question whether this curriculum is being developed in not only a transparent process, but a rigorous process that leaves high school students coming out with a full understanding of the country that they're from. One thing I think we keep hearing is that, oh, well, people on the right want education to be patriotic, which I don't think is accurate. I think what we're talking about is having a fulsome appreciation for the country and its founding, for instance. One of the core questions of American history is whether America has atoned for its founding sins and whether it is a successful multiracial democracy. So that is another reason why I think we should be skeptical of bifurcating history out into different categories instead of wrestling with it as one American story. And so, yes, all that to say, I do think we should really start to question what the College Board's influences on high schools and whether that's consistent with what American parents want their kids to be learning about and whether it's rigorous.